What it originally started out was feeling disconnected personally. I had gone through a divorce. I was alone. They really emphasized the importance of men being in community with other men. I live with peace, joy, and total empowerment right now that I did not have 10 years ago. I want to stand in to be the man who hits your wife. Do you forgive me?
Welcome to the Superhuman Blueprint Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Superhuman Blueprint Podcast. I am your host, Drew Griesel from Primal Wellness Coaching. Quick request, if you are not a subscriber, please subscribe. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode, and it helps us to work with the algorithm to get put out there for more listeners that have not yet discovered us. Also, shoot us a rating, shoot us a review, leave a comment. It all helps us to not only get visibility, but also to know whether or not you're liking the show and what else we can do. Today, we are chatting with Bob Wischer. Bob is called the Relationship Engineer. He is the founder of Men Becoming Better Men Coaching and the host of the Men Becoming Better Men podcast. And via these mediums, Bob serves as a guide for men who feel lost or disconnected, and helps them to be empowered with tools and support that they can use to engineer a life that they love, full of meaning and connection. Bob has got his own backstory, which led him to this calling, which we will get into in today's episode. Bob, welcome to the Superhuman Blueprint Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Drew. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are the relationship engineer.
Yes, sir. No, that's it's just funny that came to me a couple of months ago. Actually, I was diving into kind of where I wanted to refocus my work, and
Okay.
I've been an engineer. Well, not technically. I'm not technically an engineer in the automotive industry, but I work with engineers.
Sure.
I'm a program manager by trade. I've been doing program management for 30 years. So I basically oversee engineers. I oversee, both design side, testing, manufacturing, and it kind of clicked in me that, those are all relationships.
Right.
Whether it's, getting something done, getting something tested, getting something into production. And I've been managing those types of relationships between people that don't always see the same way. I mean, we'll have somebody that's doing the design work on a particular part, and the folks who are the ones that are actually making it in the manufacturing plant don't see the same way. So I've been bridging and mediating those relationships for 30 years. And I'm like,
Okay.
oh, now that I've become a coach too. I mean,
Yeah.
I got my coaching certifications about 7 years ago. So I've been doing that on the side. And so tying all that together, it's like, okay, it's just different type of relationship. How does that how does that apply or not apply to whether it's relationships with our spouses, with our friends, with ourselves, especially. So yeah, that's it's kind of the niche I'm sliding my way into here.
Yeah, I dig it. And it's cool to make that connection, right, between something that really seemingly has nothing to do with people, right? You're just kind of overseeing a
Yeah.
bunch of engineers and what they're doing, but when you dig a little deeper, it's all about people, right? And it's all about, as you're
Yeah.
saying, relationships, right? It's about learning personalities, learning, what motivates people, what holds people back, and how people kind of manage their own interconnectivity with the people around them. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's certainly that's most important at home, but it's also quite important in the workplace.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've broken up fights between engineers and actually one of the most impactful stories I have, it's just something I use a lot, whether it's in my coaching or in my personal life. I worked with an engineer at one point. And he was a manager or a supervisor level.
Mm-hmm.
But he was always very opinionated.
Yeah.
Of course, we all work with people like that, right? So it was always a story, and it was always long-winded. And if you would try to insert your thoughts or your opinions in the middle of that, he would just roll you right over and just keep going.
Yeah.
And so I developed this strategy for when I worked with him, like cartoons, right? When you're reading a cartoon, they got the word bubble right over the character's head.
Yeah.
So I would envision that this person I'm working with had a word bubble over his head, and until the words completely emptied out, I would visualize as he's talking, the bubble shrinking, and then once the bubble was finally empty, then I could put in my 2 cents. And I would just sit there
Okay.
and listen and listen and listen until he finished. And it, sometimes it took minutes.
Yeah.
But it helped me in that relationship to hear him out, let him get all of his thoughts on the table and get all of his
Mm-hmm.
opinions that to validate his opinions by listening to him, then come back.
Yeah.
And I also found in the gist of that giving him that ability also allowed him to open his ears to when I provided feedback and what that was, and he would accept what I was saying, not because he wouldn't accept it in the midst of, because he was just on a roll.
Yeah. He couldn't.
So
He couldn't stop. He had to finish the thought, even if the thought was extremely long. Exactly.
Yeah, it was an interesting lesson learned, not only about myself but about how some people work. Some people want to collaborate. Some people want to have a back and forth, and some people got to get all their stuff out before they're willing to listen to you back.
Well, I would say good for you for sticking with him and seeing that as an opportunity to teach yourself about how to work through that, right? Because a lot of people would just tune out and not bother.
Yeah. Didn't really have a choice. I either had to get with his flow or just continually frustrate myself. And what's the fun in that?
Right. So, men becoming better men coaching. So
Yeah.
Tell us about what it is that you do through that effort.
So Men Becoming Better Men came about not about 5 years ago, actually exactly 5 years and a week ago.
Okay.
We just crossed our 5-year anniversary. What it originally started out as was me feeling disconnected personally. I had gone through a divorce in 2013. Excuse me. 2013, went through my divorce and had realized, my kids were off to or finishing high school, off to college. Obviously, didn't have my ex-wife with me anymore. I was alone.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my friends from prior to my marriage, which had lasted 19 years at that point, kind of faded away. I mean, I still had a couple of connections, but it wasn't like a really robust, go have a beer, talk about real stuff together.
Yeah.
So I was kind of alone, and
Okay.
so I been on a path of reading and personal development, personal growth, because I had let that go for that 19-year period when I was just focused on family and raising the family. I kind of, I don't need to know anything else, right? I got everything I need. I got, being a dad is just learning as you go, right? And being a husband and all that, which I realize in retrospect, didn't know a dang thing.
Right. And I'll jump in and say that's common, right? Like a lot of parents, fathers and mothers as well, like their self-prioritization goes out the window once they have kids, have a family, and it almost, there's this feeling almost that it's selfish to take time away from people that depend on you for yourself.
Yeah. And so really all of that, basically I'm standing there like, what do I do? Where do I go? Who do I hang out with? And started reading books, and I read a book called The Truth About Men by Devon Franklin. And it had probably been the different book I read. Wild at Heart was probably another one that I read they really emphasized the importance of men being in community with other men.
Okay.
It's like, you know what, that sounds so right. It viscerally was just like, yeah, that's what I need.
Okay.
So it's like, so I grabbed my phone and I start looking, and I had been on Meetup in the app, and I had done some social get together stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, there's got to be something in here. Somebody's got to be doing this, right?
Yeah.
And I lived in the Metro Detroit area, Michigan, and there were a couple, but they were kind of far away, and they were, very nichey, and they weren't really what had resonated with me from what I heard in the book. So I was like, you know what,
Yeah.
I'm just going to create one.
Oh,
So
cool.
we started at a coffee shop one Saturday morning. I had about 12 guys show up.
Really?
From
Your
a
first
meetup.
your first one, you
Yeah,
got 12 people show up.
yeah, 12 people
Wow.
showed up.
Cool. How do you do that,
Two,
by the way? How do you, I mean, besides just posting on there, like, is there any more to it than that?
of course, there's a subscription fee. I think you can do so many without a subscription fee, but again, because I've like 400 men in the group now. So I think after you get past like 50 men or 50 people in a meetup group, I think then you got to start paying for it to be able to expand. So,
Yeah.
and I wanted to reach the masses. So, but we had that first meeting and it went amazing. Two of the men that were at that very first meeting are still with us after 5 years. But it grew. I met some other incredible men along the way who helped me to kind of build it and refine it. And
Can I backtrack for a second and just ask, how do
Yeah.
you get 12 people that show up in a place together that don't know each other? Obviously, through however you proposed the meetup or the theme of the meetup, there was some sort of theme there that connected with everyone that showed up. But how do you turn that into like a thing where people are like actually like social and enjoying being with these 12 strangers or 11 strangers?
Well, that goes into a lot of what we do I'll jump forward back because I started to say I got some help from a very good friend of mine who's actually, he stayed in our house last night. It's ironic. But he helped me to build what Men Becoming Better Men is now. And the biggest part of that, and why, to answer your question, why I think men are attracted to it, is because we give them a voice.
Okay.
What I experienced in my first marriage, and what I think a lot of men, why men show up, we lose touch with. It's hard to make friends. You get to a certain age, and you're out of college. You're going to work. You don't necessarily want to hang out with people you work with, but you want to hang out with people. So I think there's a hunger. I think that's the right word, hunger. But men have a hunger for connection. And then within the group, we provide them space, and because for the middle, it's a 2.5 hour meeting every 2 weeks. And for the middle hour of it, we do what we call breakouts. And in that format, each man if there's 5 men in the breakout group, you got 60 minutes, you get 12 minutes each. Everybody gets 12 minutes to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Could be problems, could be, spouse, work, could be celebration of, I did this, or my business is doing that, or, it can be anything. It could be deep, dark, trauma. I've heard traumatic stories of men abuse and neglect and, jail. And I'm sure I haven't heard it all yet, but I've heard a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
And we give the men that space. And that's when I've asked the question, that's why they keep coming back. There's one man, I use this example a lot, is he keeps coming back until he tells the same story almost every single meeting, every 2 weeks.
Okay.
For 4.5 years, he's been telling us the same story, but it's therapeutic for him.
Right.
It's helpful for him. It keeps him in between of the 2 weeks between we meet. It helps him cope with and rationalize and strategize all of those things that are going on in his life. And it keeps him going. And I've known 3 men personally, a coworker, a man that worked for me, and then a good friend of mine from church taking their own lives.
Okay.
And my vow is to never let that happen again
Okay.
to somebody that I know and that I
Yeah.
care about. It just for whatever reason, however I'm programmed, however I'm built, it breaks me up.
Yeah.
And I've considered it. Of course, when I went through my divorce, like I described to you, my kids were going off to college. I was done with the divorce. I was kind of like, okay, well, I don't know where I'm at now and what I'm supposed to be doing. So what's the point of being here?
Okay.
So I've had those thoughts. They were fleeting. They didn't hang out very long, but between that and knowing these men that have, it's something I can't allow to continue. And for men to be, 70% of the total percentage of suicides in the US, at least, I think that's what the statistic is. It's just something I can't bear. So when a man comes into our circle, we love him like a brother. I use the phrase, no man forgotten, no brother left behind.
Okay.
It's my mantra. And there, some men get it, some men don't. Even the ones that don't, if they ever were to come back, kind of welcome them with open arms. And so that's where Men Becoming Better Men came from. And then, of course, with my coaching, I just kind of married the two together. And now I'm working on what I'm calling it the MVP program, Most Victories Possible, because no man likes to lose. And we all want to learn from the mistakes we've made and learn and grow and go forward. So put that together, and I'm really excited about it. That's kind of why I'm doing this podcast tour, like you called it in the beginning, going on tour to kind of promote where I'm going with that, and to see who's out there who resonates with my story and wants to raise his hand and needs some help.
Okay. That's amazing. And so through the coaching, so is that private coaching then, like one-on-one?
Yep. One-on-one coaching. I've got it's a 12-month program now that I've put together. Can do it in 6, but it's built for 12.
Okay.
Just at an amazing, and it's not completely worked all the way out yet, but I've got some amazing resources that I'm using to put it together. Part of it is learning and understanding, because like I said, a lot of my growth in the last 10 years, because since the time I kind of hit my rock bottom, and one of the things my first coaches instilled in me was like the first thing we talked about on the first session, the first day, was the expectation that you will consume something educational for at least 30 minutes a day.
Okay.
So that's a big part of what we do with Men Becoming Better Men. It's a lot of what I like to do in my coaching. I don't like to just, let you come in and start word vomiting, woe is me all over, and try to change your mindset and everything. I like to teach you something in addition on how to be a better man, give you a little piece of a nugget of, and then we'll unpack that through questions and how does that apply in your life? What resources do you have to make it better? What support can I give you? What accountability can we add in? And just all kinds of things like that, where it just makes it very simple, not easy, but simple to move yourself forward. I call it 1% better every day.
And what does it mean to you to be a better man? Like, I feel like that's subjective, obviously, depending on who you're asking and who you're talking about. But
Yeah.
I feel like you probably have some kind of, overarching concept. So I'm just kind of curious what that is.
For me personally, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I want to be 1% more like him every day.
Okay.
It's pretty much clearly spelled out right in the Bible that's what he wants us to do. That's where he gives us the power and the ability, the authority to do that and work towards that. And I just want to take that love that I get from him and put it into other men and instill in them that, you matter. You have purpose. So many men that I've talked to that feel like they don't have a purpose in life. And
Yeah.
it crushes me, because my feeling is we wouldn't still be here walking on this planet if he didn't have something in mind for us.
Yeah. Purpose is huge. And
Yeah.
people, regardless of faith, or upbringing or any of that, I mean, purpose is a driving factor in whether or not someone can continue to move forward and find fulfillment. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've again talked to so many men who, okay, yeah, I have this job. I go to do it. I bring home, as much money as I can. I put a roof over my head and feed my family. But there's still, and the big revelation when I got to that, when my kids were 18-ish years old, it's like, wait a minute, they don't really need me anymore every single day. And that's what got me too, is even if I hadn't gone through divorce and all the other stuff, it's like, I'm still just going to work, on that white, the white picket fence and the, 2.5 kids and a dog kind of mode that most of us end up going into when we're especially my generation, as we go through it. But to get I'm losing my train of thought because there's a cell phone ringing. But yeah, just to not have that purpose, not have that guiding star to, where am I supposed to go now? I mean, I was like 45 years old at that point. I've got at least, maybe that's the halfway point of my life, give or take a few years. But what am I supposed to do now for this next 30, 40 years?
Yeah.
And when a man gets to that and he's like, wait, I don't know. Okay, well, I guess I don't have value, boom, take myself out. And it kills me.
How did you get through that? I mean, because you have to get outside your own head to get past that, right? So how did you? Yeah. I mean, it seems like you were pretty deep in there. So how did you find your way out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Ironically, that, like I said, probably the only thing that really got me there was I hired my first coach.
Okay.
I was kind of in a dead end job, sort of. I so sorry.
They really want to talk to you.
No, I think it's my buddy. He's sleeping on the couch, and apparently somebody wants to get a hold of him.
So you got a coach.
Got a coach. Thank you. Hopefully you're gonna get it. Sorry, you got to edit all that out. Yeah. So I hired my first coach. Ironically, it was a Facebook ad.
Oh, okay.
I was spending a lot of time, scrolling social media like we tend to do when we're zoning out, chilling out, comforting out, all those little addictions that we, used to replace the feelings that we would be getting if we were actually connected with people. So obviously I saw the Facebook ad more than once, and it was, kind of like this big flashing sign at one point. And I'm like, you know what? I just got to check this out. And I dove in, and it probably saved my life, because I learned that I don't know everything, which I thought I did at that point. I realized then I don't know anything. I found my purpose. There was actually a purpose exercise that I did very early on in that process that helped me see and realize what my value was and why I was here, what I was supposed to be doing with my life other than just making car parts, and opened up a whole world. I get from that stemmed the men's group. It's stemmed to other men's groups. I've got a couple other men's groups out there that really aren't pertinent to the conversation, but there's a lot going on in my life that I pour myself into supporting other men and making them feel like they're not alone.
Yeah.
I felt so alone for years. The last probably 10 years of my marriage, I was in a house full of people, but yeah, I was disconnected and alone. I ended up, on depression medication and the whole shebang because
Okay.
I just didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
And it like I said, it breaks my heart to know that there are men out there that are doing that just keep going further down that shame spiral because
Right.
they're getting more and more disconnected every day.
And so I assume you've kind of figured this out through your groups because you've got so many men that show up and kind of express what's happening with them and what's on their mind. But it, being vulnerable emotionally and sharing is very challenging for men in general. And usually
Yeah,
if I'm a man and I'm meeting up with my buddies, I'm not talking about my feelings. Like
yeah, exactly.
it's not something that we just do by
Yeah,
nature, and it can be very uncomfortable.
yeah, and that's why it's two things. It's intentional. We show up. You show up knowing that that's kind of the expectation.
Okay.
The name of the group kind of says it all. We want to become better men, and we can't
Yeah.
become better men if we sit around and drink beer and talk about the latest sports scores. That's we're just never going to get there.
Yeah.
So there's intention, and then there's trust. With the first thing we read off in the beginning of every meeting is confidentiality pledge.
Okay.
What is said here stays here,
Yeah.
and between those two things, men will. We've had men come show up within the first 30 minutes of the meeting, break down and start crying because they have been so burdened for so long.
Yeah.
They just need to get it out.
Right.
And that's what we need to do that more as men. And a lot of men will be like, what a pussy, whatever. But honestly, I live with peace, joy, and total empowerment right now with that I did not have
Yeah.
10 years ago.
It's interesting. In my circle, I come from a pretty heavy background in martial arts. So, a lot of guys, doing, fighting, kickboxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, mixed martial
Yeah.
arts. We do Krav Maga
Mm-hmm.
self-defense. So I'm surrounded by some pretty manly guys. And,
Yeah.
what's interesting is within that circle, I've found that a lot of those, emotional hangups on like being authentic, they don't really exist within that circle. It's really interesting. Like some of the manliest
Mm.
guys when they're within that circle of people that are kind of from a similar cut, they actually let those barriers down, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool to see because obviously
Yeah.
I exist outside that circle as well, and I don't see that as much outside that
Right.
circle. But it is
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
how just
Exactly. And
just
that's the
some
trust. That's the trust part.
right. Exactly. I trust you to stand in front of me and we're going to fight each other. We're going to friendly fight. And I trust you
Yeah.
not to damage me. So, okay,
Yeah.
now I'm
Yeah.
going
Don't kill
to
me.
don't kill me. I trust you. And now I'm going to share some things about myself and I trust you not to damage me emotionally.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
the trust thing runs deep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where I see your situation with the martial arts and all that is again you're sweating together. You're trusting each other within the context of that activity. Same thing
Yeah.
with the military. I was not in the military, and I know a lot of guys that were, and once they're out of it, they kind of long for that again too because it gives that
Yeah.
same structure. You're in the
Yep.
trenches literally with your brothers, and you're shoulder to shoulder, and you're taking care of, and you build that trust. So
Yeah.
for somebody like me, who I was never in the military, I've never been, really. I mean, the closest I've come to what you're doing is I spent 4 years doing CrossFit, and which is different again because it's not just men, and you're not beating each other up. I mean, there's a certain amount of support there,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but I've never had that bonding brotherhood kind of thing. I was
Mm-hmm.
even in college. I was in a business fraternity that was co-ed. So yeah, there was a little bit, but not masculine male bonding, which is
Right.
really what my opinion. And not to sound sexist, but it gives us men our juice, our ability to be the man that we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
lead, being leaders and being, out there taking care of business. And not to say that women can't do those things, but that's our primary role. That's why we were created.
Yep. To serve. And yeah, and I have a pretty diverse friend group, and very, very close friends, male and female. But if I did not have my male group, that like I can't really even imagine not having that. But if I didn't,
Yeah,
then
I can't
that
either
would be a
anymore.
huge void. Yeah, that would be a huge
I,
void.
I actually can't imagine it to such an extent that I have technically three of them right now. I have three different and distinct groups that I'm part of that are all
Mm-hmm.
specifically men, and hopefully potentially a fourth. Because right now we're doing a co-ed version of something that's supposed to be male and female, but because of a lot of different things, we've kept it as a co-ed at this point. But my wife and I'm not married again, my second marriage, but she's awesome. We want to separate it to be men and women. So I would have a fourth
Oh, okay.
specific group that where I'm working specifically with men. So
Okay.
it's like I said, it's given me everything that I have ever wanted since I was a kid. I mean, I was that proverbial kid that was getting bullied in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, had to deal with big kids that wanted to intimidate me, to little kids littler than me that just wanted to talk trash,
Yeah.
um, and got through all that, and just really was never able to connect with people. And I've had a few good friends here and there along the way, but
Mm-hmm.
never great friends. And
Okay.
now I've gotten to the point where I know right now, if I picked up my phone, I can call any one of these guys that's in
Yeah.
any of these three groups right now and say, "Hey, dude, I need a hand." Now,
Yeah.
burying a body, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and I could get a few guys to show up. Whereas,
Yeah.
10 years ago, I couldn't say that I could even call one person. That if I called that one person, he'd be like, "You want me to do what?" No,
Right.
dude, well, I don't know you.
Yeah.
Click. So
Yeah, and when you say that, it makes me reflect on myself, and that may be why I've never been at a low point, as you've described, and for yourself and for some folks, and I can possibly attribute that to the fact that I've had people like
yeah,
you have now in my life forever. Like
yeah.
my my best friend, we've been we joke about, we're celebrating our 26-year anniversary this year, right?
Oh wow,
And
yeah,
yeah, and we've gone our separate ways, in life. He did his thing and I did my thing, and we've moved different places away from each other, but we never lost that bond.
yeah.
And now we're back here together, and we see each other all the time, and it's great.
It's
But
awesome.
yeah, just something like that, it makes such a difference. And I'm gonna open up to you here, Bob, and so I'm gonna share when. So I have two boys. I have a 5-year-old and a almost 2-year-old.
Okay,
And when
fun ages.
yeah, it's super fun. It's exhausting, but very fun.
Yeah.
uh, when with the first one, when we went to the hospital to get for an ultrasound, and we found out the gender, I always wanted a daughter. I thought it'd be really fun to have a daughter. And when we found out it was a boy, I just like there was this like internal panic in me. It's like, oh my God, like I have like my sense of responsibility increased so much in that moment that they said we're having a boy. Like I have to teach this person who's going to be they're going to be whoever they're going to be, but they're going to be relying on us for guidance. I have to teach this person to become like a good man,
Yeah.
And then I had another boy. The pressure doubled. I've grown
Yeah.
accustomed to it, and I'm figuring it out as I go, just like we do. But just the concept of not just being a good man, but being a leader, being a servant, being a contributing member of whatever your society or social group is. You know, being a caregiver, being caring, and then along these lines also just being able to be vulnerable as well. Like there's just so much, and people think women are complicated. Well, men are complicated too.
Yeah.
We're a different kind of complicated.
Yeah. It's funny you say, the way you described vulnerable right there. It's not about, going out in public and being vulnerable in the street corner. It's
Right.
being vulnerable when when it's appropriate,
Yeah.
because when we're out, out on the street corner, and I mean by in our workplaces and our leadership, when we're supposed to be leaders, we are leaders. But when we need to recharge, or we need to get something off our chest, or or heal in some way, it's having that band of brothers with you that you can
Yeah.
trust, that you could sit down and if you need to get real, then you get real. And again, they're smaller moments that we don't need. It's not like we're got to get together every week and go in a closet and cry together or something. It's just we need those moments to refuel our abilities to lead and love like we're supposed to.
Yeah. Yep. And it's hard to even like I don't I don't personally like have a problem opening up. Mostly I just kind of let things out as they need to come out, but sometimes there's things that I just want to get out, but sometimes it's hard to kind of make that call to someone and just say, hey, I just want to
Right.
talk.
Well, and here's the benefit of knowing, or at least being cognizant of your ability to do that, is a lot of things. I got this wisdom from a very very good friend of mine. Be careful what you let onto your wife, as far as your insecurities and your vulnerabilities and things like that, because depending on the woman, again, not all women are this way, but women, the percentage of divorces that are initiated by women are larger than those initiated by men.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because women start to see chinks in his armor. Can he take care of me? Is he strong enough for me? Is he the right kind of leader for me and or my children? And they start to see those chinks in the armor, and that's when they start thinking about, okay, well, maybe this isn't the right relationship for me, and start
Hmm.
planning for other things. So to be careful what you're revealing to her, when those chinks could be damaging to your relationship with her. Those are the ones you want to take to your men. Take to
Yeah,
your,
you got to take it
your,
somewhere, right? Because if you
yeah,
bottle it up, then you just then
exactly.
you
Bottling it up
lose
is
it.
no good.
Yeah,
But taking it to her is just got to be, you got to be cognizant of it. I'm not saying it's not something, it's not a, nothing goes to her. It's a, be careful.
yeah.
And
So
again, it depends on
strategic.
the woman. Strategic, perfect word. It depends
Yeah,
on the woman, depends on you, depends on a lot of other factors, but
sure.
um, it does happen. And that's when men get blindsided by women in divorce, and it wrecks them. And then those
Yeah,
are the guys that show up in my circle with, I have no friends, I'm broken, no women want to be with me, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
So,
So we've shared, a lot of the pitfalls of not being able to be vulnerable and to open up and to have a safe space to do so. But Bob, in the years that you've been doing this, I got to imagine you've seen a lot of victories, as you said. So
oh,
can you share
absolutely.
some of the resounding victories that you've seen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Actually, it just popped into my head when I said that last sentence. So there's a man that showed up in our group, um, quite near the beginning, probably good 4 years ago. Uh, broken, came out of was dumped out of a relationship. Wasn't a marriage, but it was a relationship.
Yeah.
And he'd cry, and we used to meet at a township park, and we'd be sitting in lawn chairs around in this park, and I can remember vividly him sitting there just crying, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go forward.
Okay.
And so we worked with him, picked him up, built him back up, and he was Middle Eastern, and he was a physician actually back in the Middle East.
Yep.
And his goal was to be able to practice medicine in the States.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, because of this relationship situation wrecked him, he could not move forward in any regard in his life.
Okay.
And worked with him, got him squared away, got him back foundation below him of belonging and personal growth, and reading books that are for men, about men, how to build yourself back up. And at one point I challenged him actually at one point to do something, and he reluctantly did it. But he embraced it, and he went through and got it done, and end up, long story short, he is now practicing medicine. Yeah, probably for the last year or so. That might even be longer than that. Time flies. At least a year and a half. He passed his boards. He's practicing as a physician in the United States. And, to me, I don't like to toot my own horn. For me, it's all about me serving, and helping people out. But to be able to help a man like this get back to where he wanted to be, and now he is doing the work that he's doing as a physician. He could be saving lives or curing diseases or getting people healthy. And to know I had a small part in that just makes me feel so good that the work that I'm doing and the things that we're putting out there for these men, and the ability that we all have to go from, like I did, from just feeling like I was at rock bottom to feeling like I'm on top of the world, and I am on a roll.
Yeah.
And that's, I want my ultimate goal is for every man to feel that way. Because if we, think about it, if we all felt that way, high tide rises all boats, right? If we all feel that way, our wives are going to feel that way. Our kids are going to feel that way. Our coworkers are going to feel that way. Everybody around us is going to feel that way. And if we all felt that way, we have a lot less problems in this world.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that he's a Middle Eastern man, right? And I think that just being a male, it's inherently hard to be vulnerable and to open up. But then you start to think, well, culturally, there are a lot of cultures where not only is it hard just because you're a male, but it's culturally unacceptable. Like, you just don't do it. And there are some very unhealthy views of what it is to be a man that would share their feelings. And then, and there are all kinds of other things you can dig into on that, but just that obstacle is significant. And I think it's amazing. You mentioned, so clearly you have a diverse group coming, which is fantastic, because then people can kind of see, like, okay, well, in the culture that I come from, we don't do this, but here I am surrounded by people that are doing this. So maybe it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably one of the things that makes me proudest every time we show up. We've had a couple of Middle Eastern men. We've had, white, black, Indian. We're kind of in an area where we live outside Detroit's kind of a cultural melting pot anyway. So it doesn't surprise me. I really wish it was more.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we were more diverse. I mean, because for anybody from any of those other groups to walk into a circle of men that, so there's 20 white guys sitting around in a circle, it's got to be intimidating. It's got to be hard. So to have to have a couple of men from other races in there helps it be more welcoming for other men that do show up, and they're like, oh, okay, I'm not the only black guy here. Or I'm not the only, Middle Eastern guy here, or the only
Right.
Indian guy here. It gives them, somebody that, okay, I'm not alone. But then the funny part about that is once they do get in, and we all realize that it doesn't matter what color your skin is, or where we were born, or where we grew up. We're all just guys, and we have these same stupid ass problems that we're all trying to deal with. And we don't, I would be shocked actually if you pulled the men in the group right now to actually how many non-white men are in the circle. Because I bet the line that it's so blurred at this point that nobody cares or nobody even thinks about it.
Right. Yeah. Well,
and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of it.
Yep. What else? What other successes have you seen?
Oh, what other successes? I think, God, there's so many little ones.
The little ones are great. I mean, it doesn't have to be huge. Like anything is good. Any success is a success.
Well, yeah. I mean, even just another man that I'm thinking of off the top of my head came in. He's got a mental disorder. Right?
Okay.
We have confidentiality, so I'm trying to be very vanilla with it.
Sure.
A mental disorder, and he was very challenged with it. I remember back again, he's been around for a good 4 years or so too. Very challenged with it when we would go into our breakout circles, and that's what he would talk about, how he was trying to get his arms around it and control it and be okay with it. And actually, I did I kind of took a semi-informal poll the other day about, because one of the things we do that's, we kind of been debating for years about how we do it, but when we do our breakouts, we just kind of do it randomly. And I was asking the group if they wanted to go away from that and do specific, where we would have the same people in our small group breakouts every week, just for continuity and for familiarity and whatever, instead of this random mishmash where you could talk to a man in your breakout, in January, and then not see him again until December potentially.
Sure.
So anyway, we were batting that around, and so I was kind of asking everybody, well, if we were to do this, who would you want in your group? And this man, his name came up multiple times.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really interesting, because I mean, I've seen his growth. I've seen he used to have a very important but semi, I'll call it a service job.
Okay.
Sure. Trying to be politically correct here, a service job. And now he's in a serving role, doing some very important work in the community and for people. And that's just, it's a big jump for me to see where he was and where he got to. And now he's also earned the respect. And he's one of the younger guys too. He's always been one of the younger guys. But he's earned that respect of the rest of the men in the group, that multiple people named him as, I want this guy in my small group. So
yeah, that's totally a metric of success, right? You go from being the person that like can't even get your arms around yourself, and all of a sudden you're the person that like all of these other people want to be around.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. It was surprising for me, because it's a lot of those little wins.
Yeah.
And what I've realized in this recent revelation is that all those little wins that he's had for over the last 4 years have added up to now they're a significant chunk.
Yeah.
And if I look back, I kind of almost wish there was a way I could have been recording people's conversations back then to be able to pull it up and say, here's what you looked like back when you first showed up. Yeah. And how much of a mess you were, and look at where you are now. It's just,
it's a transformation.
Yeah. And then, one-on-one client-wise success, probably the biggest one right now, and he actually messaged me this morning, he had originally come to the group, and then we started working together one-on-one, and he was battling addiction. And again, long story short, without any of the gory details of the in-between, he texted me this morning. He's now been sober for 7 months.
Cool.
And that one, every time he gives me an update on that, it feels better and better every time he's like, I'm still sober, and
Yeah.
I'm still fighting the good fight and doing the right things. And yeah, he's still battling. We all battle every day, and some people battle more than others. But the fact that he's still swinging and he's not giving up is extremely impressive, and I'm extremely proud of him and all of the people I've worked with that stick to those things that we talk about, and those the reframes of whether it's victim mentality or shame or guilt or whatever the case may be. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, as coaches, it's things like that keep us going, right? I mean, even for myself, I do, it started out in fitness, and fitness coaching is okay. I mean, it's fulfilling to a degree, but it evolved into wellness coaching, and now it's, I really look at kind of like whole body and mind wellness, and seeing people really start to become a better version of themselves in those ways is it's phenomenal for them. But for me as the coach, it's it brings me a lot of fulfillment.
Well, and you'll get to this. I'll assume here. I'll put some pressure on your boys that maybe they're going to play baseball or some kind of sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
My son played baseball from the time he was 4 years old, and so I always coached. And
Okay.
of course, you always have that kid on the team, right? That can't hit the ball, can't catch the ball, can't throw the ball, right? So I remember, I think it was my son would have been probably 9 years old, maybe 10, somewhere in that range. And we had a kid on the team that was just like that. And I think we had him for a couple years. So he must have been 10. So it must have been 9 and 10. But he couldn't, uncoordinated. And of course the parents wanted him out there, and, kind of, that forcing him to go and do it, to be active. And it's the last game of the season. And I will never forget this moment. That kid, it was Coach Pitch, or was it Kid Pitch?
Okay.
The year he got it was Kid Pitch. We went from Coach Pitch to Kid Pitch, and
Okay.
he got a hit. He got his first hit in 2 years, and I swear I jumped higher and screamed louder than his parents, than anybody, that just to see him finally get it, get that monkey off his back. And I have no idea what happened to this kid. I should probably see if I can find him on Facebook, but just to see whatever happened to him, because I'm sure he's an adult now, because my son's 25. So
Yeah.
I'd love to see what happened to that kid, and hopefully that moment still has kept with him and kept him going for all this time and through his whole life, because those, again,
pivotal
magic moments. And I love the analogy of pebble in the pond, right? You're just that one little blip in the ripple effect, that you'll never see that last ripple. But again, being a believer, I know it's a good ripple when it gets that far out, and people's lives are being impacted. So
yeah, it's beautiful. So you do your in-person group meetups there. Do you know if groups like that exist all over the country?
I have heard through men that are involved in my group that they've been involved in other groups that are not quite the same. They're similar, but not the same as ours.
Okay.
I am actually about a week worth into writing a book about how to create what we've created. So
Oh, cool.
little tease. Not sure how long that'll take to
Yeah.
complete the process, but I have committed, and I have, again, one of the men's groups I'm in. I have accountability now. I have an accountability partner in that group that is going to make sure that I fulfill my 1 year goal of putting
Okay.
this all down on paper and publishing it.
Amazing.
My goal has always been to kind of expand it, but it hasn't worked out. We've tried it a few times in a few different ways, and it never seems to. And I don't know. There's all kinds of men's groups around the country. Mankind Project is one. What's the other one? I think there's one that's just called Men's Group. It's pretty simple name.
Okay.
But there are groups around the country. How they expand, and I think they do a lot of stuff online.
Right.
But we learned pretty harshly through COVID that we just, maybe it's the guys in the group, maybe it's me, I don't know, but it just didn't work as well during that period where we could not meet face to face. It's just because we had built it meeting face to face, and then we had this void. And once we got back, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe how painful that was and how hard that was. I mean, of course, that situation was painful for a lot of reasons, but that was one of them. Was we couldn't connect with each other, and it was doing it like this for an hour on a podcast, or that's a whole different story. But when you're again trying to do that vulnerability and trying to do that, intimacy, vulnerability.
Oh yeah, you can't get on a Zoom call and be a box on a screen and do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
And that's kind of the beauty.
It's way too impersonal.
Yeah, that's kind of the beauty and excitement of the other. So the other men I am in, the other men's group I'm in, is a virtual men's group. It's run by my current coach. He's out of the Carolinas, and actually we're going next weekend to a retreat that he's put together where I'm going to get to meet some of the guys now for the first time in person that I've been seeing on the screen. So I'm totally jacked about that. Very excited. Because every time I go to something like that, it's an amazing experience regardless. Just meeting new people and interacting with them is a blast. But these guys, they seem special for a lot of reasons. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited. Probably more excited than I probably should be. I hope I'm not setting the expectation so high. But the last retreat I went to with a different group, I was mind blowing. So it was. I just really love getting away and getting vulnerable with new people or people that I know but don't know, getting to know them better and having those, another set of eyes to maybe point me in a direction that I haven't seen, or, some blinders that I don't have or whatever. And that's what coaching is all about.
I haven't done anything like that. The closest thing that I could say I've done is going to I teach Krav Maga. Are you familiar with Krav Maga?
I thought about doing it once in a blue moon, but it didn't work out.
Okay, yeah. So I teach Krav Maga. I've been teaching for a while, and a couple of years ago, I decided to go out to a instructor training camp in Israel.
Oh wow, in Israel, that's legit. That's where that comes from, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and so that was a pretty special experience, and this was, I think, their first in-person camp after COVID. So it was pretty small. I think there was 9 of us there as participants plus the instructor. And it was a phenomenal experience. It was very intimate because it was small. Those of us that were there, we really got to know each other. We've built bonds that have lasted beyond camp. And yeah, I mean, we're there to learn or improve upon an existing skill set, but there ended up being so much more to it than that.
And that's the men's that's men's support group, whatever you want to call it. I've still never come up with a good. It's not a support group. It's just it's a men's group. It's guys being guys and doing our thing and it's magical. It really is. It's a cheesy word, but that's the best one I've been able to come up with, is just going to these things. I'll tell you a brief story of my last experience in going to a men's group. So it was about a month and a half ago, back late April, early April. And it was one where they have speaker sessions, and then you do small group breakouts. So the message that had been told from the stage resonated with me really, really, really heavily. And my wife was in a car accident 7 years ago, and she's had lingering effects from that, post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury and stuff. And so she deals with that every day. Still, like today, even she's dealing with it. And I was still holding a lot of anger towards the man who hit her, because it wasn't my wife's fault. This man just drove right in front of her, and completely 100% his fault. So I've been holding this anger for years, and went to this retreat, brought this up in this small group breakout after the session, and immediately had men praying over me, for forgiveness and healing and all of that. And then one of the men was from Colombia, didn't speak English. That's the part that blows me away about this. It says through the translator that he wanted to be surrogate for me. And I got real confused. And I was like, surrogate?
What is that?
What do you mean surrogate? He's like, I want to stand in to be the man who hit your wife. I want to tell you some things. And I'm like, okay. This is really weird, but okay, I'm open. He puts his hand on my shoulder, looks me dead in the eye, and starts speaking in Spanish. So of course I have to wait for the translator to start catching up, right? He's like, I apologize to you. I apologize to your wife. I apologize the pain I've put her through. I apologize, all of that. And again, at this point, my mind is just so blown. I wish I could remember all the things he said, but he went on for a couple minutes about, and it was the most incredible thing that someone has ever done for me in my healing journey of all of the things I've ever experienced. That I've been walking around since that day. I've felt this incredible lightness and incredible sense of peace, because I've now really, and in the context of the conversation, he said, "Do you forgive me?" And I said, "Yes, I forgive you." And saying those words out loud was so powerful for me. It freed the burden that I had, that I was carrying around. And in the last 2 months, I've been nothing can bother me. Nothing stops me. Nothing, everything is awesome. And it was an incredible experience. So that was a long way to say, if you ever get an opportunity to go to a retreat like that, whether it's a Christian retreat or just a men's retreat of some kind, or a men's group, it's just, it's an incredible experience. And I saw many other men at the same retreat having just mind-blowing revelations and experiences and findings about themselves. That it's so powerful when you get a group of, this was 250 men, and we're in this retreat, and it was mind-blowing. So I mean, that's a huge win for you, right? To carry this anger with you all the time for so long, and to be able to release that. And now, I mean, now you have a new, I guess we call it a technique for helping other men, right? Yeah. I haven't had a necessity to use it yet, but it's definitely in the toolbox. And if I ever prompted to use it, it would be, I could imagine it would be as powerful in the right situation as it was for me. But for this, that's one that you reserve for special situations. But the other funny thing is, this young man was in his 20s. He was a young kid. Okay. I'm 50. I turned 55 next week. This kid's 30 some years younger than me, and he pulls this out of me. It's like, wow. Yeah. It's amazing. Just amazing.
Well, the people that you choose to surround yourself, right? You choose to go to this
Yes.
retreat, and you're going to get something from that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Cool. Well, Bob, this has been an amazing conversation, much different than all my other conversations that I've had on this podcast so far. But I love it. I absolutely love it. So you've sent me links to how to get in touch with you
Yep.
and how to look at your program. So I will share those on the show notes for today's podcast, which will be at thesuperhumanblueprintpodcast.com. And if you're in the Detroit area,
Yes.
go find Bob. Go check out the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, more the merrier.
Cool.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, Drew.
Awesome. Well, it's been amazing chatting, Bob. Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, thanks.